Welcome, everybody. How many people here for the first time tonight? Welcome, welcome, welcome. Anybody tuning in on Zoom for the first time tonight? Welcome to you. This is the regular Monday night class here at Against the Stream. It's been happening on Mondays on the west side. We used to be in Santa Monica. We've been over here for a few years, but almost 17 years this Monday night Sangha has been happening every Monday. Some of you have been coming for a long time. Some of you are new. Welcome to all. I started the new year with a story of the life of the Buddha, and we're going slowly through his core teachings of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And you've arrived, if you're new, on the few months into it. Tonight we're talking about the fifth factor of the Eightfold Path, which is about our relationship to money, to work and livelihood. And so we're going to explore that tonight. One of the core principles of Buddhism, of course, it's about meditation. We come to meditate, learn meditation, practice meditation together. Talk about the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, how we can really apply them to our lives, how we can live this path, if that's what you're interested in doing. But one of the core refuges of Buddhism is community. And it's a big part of my personal motivation to have a meditation center and to teach is to help people develop community. And it's a little difficult in meditation groups to meet people because you come and you pretend like you're spiritual and you meditate and you don't want to say anything stupid, and then you leave and you go back out to your life. And so I have been in the habit most of the time of having you introduce yourselves to each other, to actually meet a couple of people in the room that you don't know yet, so that if you come regularly, you'll start to know each other and develop community. So that it's more than just I meditate and I listen, but I engage in this intentional engaging. And so since we're talking about what's called right livelihood, wise, livelihood, and I'll talk about what the Buddha encouraged us to not do for a living. It's all about karma. All of Buddhism is all about karma. And of course, we don't want to have a job that's creating negative karma for us. We spend so much of our life working. Most of us do, not all of us, but most of us spend so much of our life in our employment, whether you're self-employed or, but earning money probably. And there's the perspective that, you could be the best meditator. You could meditate all the time, but if you're engaged in a job that's creating negative karma for you, your meditation practice isn't going to take you that far towards liberation, towards freedom. So I'll give the full spiel after the meditation. But I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself to somebody in the room that you don't know yet, maybe groups of 2 or 3. Don't just talk to your homies that you're with. Talk to some people you don't know yet, to meet some new people. And talk about what you do for a living. Very LA. What do you do? What do you do for a living? And we're going to explore, how important it is to choose a livelihood that's not causing harm to ourselves or others, whether it's karmically or physically. And that probably some people in our community, I said last week, I've got I don't know if he showed up here tonight, but a guy I've been communicating with whose Instagram handle is the Buddhist Butcher. With like a sense of humor about I'm a Buddhist and I'm also a butcher and I make killer bacon and it's what I do. And I know it's kind of against the livelihood teachings, but it is also my passion and what I do. And so that might be true. There might be some of you who have livelihoods that are not, in line with the ideal Buddhist And that's okay, rather than, hopefully there's not a lot of judgment or a lot of shame about it. Just kind of honesty of, maybe you are still dealing drugs. That's okay. You're still welcome here. Maybe you are still murdering or stealing or, loan sharks or, assassins or whatever, you might be. So find somebody, a couple people that you don't know, and talk about what you do for a living and maybe why you do it and how you like doing it. Talk about work for a minute. So we'll have a period of meditation for about 30 minutes. I'll offer some instructions for the benefit of those new to meditation, this kind of meditation, and also just as a reminder to the rest of you who are professionals. So find a way to sit that's upright and relaxed. Allowing our eyes to be gently closed and the body to be relaxed in the upright posture. Establishing an inner attitude of kindness, friendliness, acceptance towards whatever arises in your meditation. The intention to be kind, patient with your own mind, with your body, any discomfort you might experience. We establish mindfulness, present time, non-judgmental, kind awareness, turning our awareness, our attention inward to our direct experience. The Buddha's initial meditation instructions were something like, breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. Bring mindfulness to the sensations that the breath creates. In order to become fully present with the breath, we have to disengage from our tendency to think about the future and the past, or to fantasize, or to wander in thought. So disengaging our attention from the mind and giving our full attention to the body, the sensations of sitting upright, the sensations of breathing. No need to try to control the breath in any way. Just let your awareness receive the breath, if it's deep or shallow, long or short. primary effort is on paying attention to what's happening, not trying to make any certain thing happen. Just receiving each breath. And when the attention gets drawn off into a thought or a sound, just come back to the breath over and over. You notice tension in your jaw or your shoulders or belly. Try to soften. Release the tension. As you exhale, softening the belly, releasing the jaw. So we stay open, relaxed, receptive to our own attention, not resisting or suppressing anything. Most of our suffering, our unhappiness, is created by our own minds. Part of this first foundation of mindfulness is learning to ignore your mind, to break our addiction to obeying the mind, constantly believing our own confused thoughts, our judgments, our insecurities, our fears. See for yourself how you can disengage from the contents of the thinking mind as you return your attention to the feeling body over and over. Continue to keep it quite simple, just being mindful of the breath. Or you can begin to expand to become more inclusive of your whole body, mindfulness of the contact with the chair, the cushion, how your hands are resting. What other sensations are associated with the breath? Perhaps you feel your clothing against your skin. Becoming aware of this body as the four elements. Feeling the earth solidity with the contact. The air with each breath. The water with the heart beating, with the saliva. This body, which is mostly water, sitting here. And the heat, temperature, fire element. This body with its 6 ways of knowing, 6 sense doors. We can be mindful of all of them. The sound as an object of mindfulness. Perhaps even tuning into that high-pitched tone, the ringing that is always present. Smell and taste and seeing. And rather than continuing to ignore the mind, bring awareness to the process of thoughts and emotions passing through consciousness, awareness, knowing, observing. The plans, the memories, the hopes, the fears, cravings, aversions, rising and passing through the heart and mind. present time, non-judgmental awareness of what is. One of my teachers says, just turn towards and identify that right now it's like this. These thoughts, these sensations, these emotions. Some are pleasant, agreeable, enjoyable. Some are unpleasant, difficult, hard to bear. The goal of mindfulness is to see clearly the reality of our own heart and mind and body, to understand the impermanent nature of all thought, all sensation, all emotion. Learning to meet the unpleasant experiences with compassion, forgiveness, mercy. Learning to meet the pleasant with non-attached appreciation. Coming to know that none of it's all that personal. It's just a human body, experience sensation, just the human condition, this mind that tends to be so self-centered. It's not your fault. I'm going to start with some questions for you to reflect on. Maybe you've already started to reflect on them since I already talked about work and money a little bit. The Buddha's second noble truth identifies the cause of human suffering. The only reason you're ever unhappy is because of craving. Craving is the culprit every time. This is the Buddha's teaching. You can check that out for yourself, see if it holds up. You don't have to believe it, but next time you're unhappy, look at why and see where's the craving? What's causing this unhappiness? What's causing this suffering? What is it that I'm rejecting, right? Also, aversion is a form of craving for it to be different than it is. Or what is not happening that I wish to be happening, and therefore I'm unhappy, I'm suffering. Something's happening I wish wasn't happening, I'm craving for it not to be so, I'm suffering. How much of your craving, don't answer, but reflect, like take a moment to reflect on this. How much of how much of the time do you suffer? How much of the suffering that you experience in life, unhappiness, difficulty, stress, discontent, is about money? Is about craving for more money, or attachment to the money you have, afraid of losing it, or I don't know if anybody suffers from aversion to all of the money you have. Wish I didn't have so much fucking money. I'm gonna get rid of it. Probably some people suffer like that. You know, like there's that that statistic that just about everybody that wins the lottery and gets the millions and millions of dollars says, I was way happier before. Actually, having all of this money created a ton of extra suffering in my life that I didn't have before I had all this money. I thought we all think we want lots of it, right? Most of us think like, oh yeah, it'd be awesome to have abundance. If you're spiritual, you call it abundance. But that often, actually, when that happens, it's like, oh, this fucking sucks. This is terrible. I don't know who my friends are anymore. Everybody wants something from me. It's quite interesting, supposedly this was in the original teaching from the Buddha in the deer park in Saranath, just after his awakening, and he's talking to his 5 total renunciate friends, these sadhus that he's hanging out with, these ascetics. And supposedly he then talked to them about livelihood, which to me, I feel like, I'm not sure that that's the Buddha was, Siddhartha walked away from livelihood. He walked away from his inheritance. He walked away from money. He practiced total unemployment. He was, he renounced employment. He said, I'm not going to work. I'm going to be a full-time meditator and beggar and homeless person and, kind of a vow of poverty on whatever level. But at some point, so it may or may not have taken place in the first turning of the wheel, this first teaching when he's telling his friends about suffering and the cause of suffering and nirvana, the end of suffering, the possibility of being truly free. And when he's breaking down the Eightfold Path, and he breaks it down into these 3 categories. We have to develop meditation, mindfulness and concentration, which will lead to wisdom, and the wisdom of understanding the karmic implications of all of our actions, every intentional thought, act, speech, deed, everything that we do has karmic momentum to it. Including what we do for a living. So anyways, I'm skeptical that he was saying that to these renunciates who didn't have jobs. But at some point, I completely believe and love that the Buddha was so inclusive of householders, of what we call lay people, non-renunciates, people like us who aren't being monks, aren't being nuns, but are staying in the world in relationships, have jobs, are engaging in sexuality, have money, are earning money. Even though he chose a life of celibacy and renunciation and no job and no money, and gave the teachings away, didn't charge anybody for it. It wasn't his, Buddhism is in a sad state in the world where it's become a kind of commerce rather than this sort of tradition in the Buddha's time, which is like you just give it away. You just freely offered, everything freely offered. And here we find ourselves 2,600 years later in a, completely dysfunctional capitalist society that trying to practice this path. Okay, what is my job? What's my relationship to money? How much am I suffering about it? How much is enough? How do I earn it? And the big question, the core question of this fifth factor of the Eightfold Path is, am I creating negative karma for myself in my attempts to earn money? Is what I'm doing causing harm in any way to myself or anyone else? If it's causing harm, it's creating negative karma, it's going to hinder our liberation. So if you're serious about liberation, a lot of people come to meditation groups like this that aren't that serious about liberation, just kind of looking for some stress reduction and some meditative tools to navigate your bank account or the stresses of your life. But of course, the Buddha's teaching has one goal: enlightenment. It's not about stress reduction. It's not about getting comfortable in samsara and making sure that you have a lot of abundance. It's about, can I get free? How free can we get? Whether we have abundance or we have lack. And then how do we navigate our relationship to money and work and the karma of our actions? And a strong encouragement that if you're serious, if you want to get as free as possible, it's going to be necessary to find a profession. If you're going to stay as a professional, if you're going to stay in the material world, it's necessary to find a job that's not causing harm. Because you can't get free while creating negative karma. They don't go together. So you have to find and how much of your life do you spend working? 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week? The last 2 weeks, we talked about communication and action. We're always communicating something. We're always, our conduct, whether we're at work or we're not at work, but that full-time employment that almost all of us probably have on some level or another, you're not just earning a paycheck, you're earning karma all day, every day at work. And what kind of karma are we earning? Now, the way that it's traditionally taught is that you don't have to be doing something super helpful and compassionate. It's not, he didn't say like everyone has to be a social worker. That's it. If you want to be a Buddhist, you have to be an environmentalist and an activist and a social worker, and you got to be, engaged in creating a positive change. He did not say that. He said you just can't be engaged in something that's causing harm. As long as you're not causing yourself harm, there's lots of livelihoods that maybe aren't that helpful to anybody, but they're still right livelihood. They're not harmful. So some of the traditional careers to be avoided are anything to do with killing, soldiers. And this is a tricky one. I've had lots of students who are soldiers over the years, people, out of poverty, out of whatever, join up, out of patriotism, join up. And get serious about Buddhism and say, oh, but I'm in the army. I'm in the whatever, Navy or something. So this is one of the things that can be a dilemma for people who are in the armed services, and then they hear the Buddha said, wrong livelihood, not a good way to make money. We don't want to be engaged in a livelihood that might necessitate violence. And certainly don't want to be in a livelihood that does killing, butchers, fishing, hunting, any of those things where you're killing living beings. You're getting the karma from that, and you just don't want to engage in that. You don't want to, because you'll be, if you want to get enlightened, if you want to get free, you don't want to be taking on that karma at work. Some of the other things is they said any kind of drug dealing, including alcohol. Alcohol's a drug, we all know that. Which, 2,600 years ago, he's saying that, and there's bars and there's, stuff. But now, I think it's a little bit more uncommon back then. Now it's like everywhere. It's the implications of not making money off of booze. It's like, shit, I just work in Whole Foods. But Whole Foods sells lots of booze. And I'm making money off of not only that you're working for Bezos, but, you're working or working in a restaurant, even working down, I plant food, wine, vegan, I'm there because I care about the animals, and I work at the vegan restaurant that sells booze. And I'm making money off of an organization that gets people drunk and deluded, or buzzed and deluded, whatever. So this can be quite tricky. Buddha's stance on sobriety, personal fifth precept, we abstain from using any kind of recreational drugs and alcohol, and we abstain from profiting from others' people's use of any kind of recreational. So that can be a challenge. Some of you might be waiters or bartenders or work at the local vegan wine dealer or grocery store. Or I said also trading in flesh. And some translate this as selling meat. And some translate this as that what he meant is selling people, human trafficking, slavery, pimping, any kind of like sex trade, being involved in profiting from the sex trade, selling people. I've had people ask me before, like, can we sell ourselves? Is this, because the way that it is worded is don't profit off of selling other people. But I've had sex workers in the community say, like, well, is it wrong livelihood that I choose to engage in the pornography or sex industry? I don't know. You have to, and there's something, I think, so there's some classic like killing and drug dealing and pimping but some of it comes down to like, how does it feel? Like, how does your job feel to you? How does your career feel to you? Does it feel good? Does it feel like you're doing something where you feel like, I feel good about this? There is a part of it, rather than like Buddhism as here's the rules, all of our mindfulness is how's it resonating? How's my karma feel in my life? The way that I speak, how does that feel? The way that I act, how does that feel? What I do for a living, how does it feel? Does it feel wholesome? Does it feel good? Does it at least not feel bad? You know, if you're doing something that doesn't feel good, stop doing it. If you can, and maybe there's a little privilege in that, you know, of kind of like, yeah, just quit. Not everybody can just quit. It might take some time to extricate yourself from a livelihood that, you know, it's not like overnight, like, oh, I want to be a good Buddhist, so I'm going to quit my job. But, you know, put some things into place and be like, I'm going to get out of this field of work. It doesn't feel good. I don't want to be selling alcohol. I don't want to be engaging in, you know, murder or a couple of other things that he talks about, livelihoods, and I had to look this up, involved in deceit, treachery, or usury. Do you know what usury means? I didn't know what it means. I had to look it up a long time ago, where it's like charging an exorbitant interest rate. Like, you know, kind of, and back then, 2,600 years ago, where people would become indentured servants because they would get themselves into a debt that it was impossible to get out of, this usury debt where it's like, you know, not only are you indebted, your children are indebted. Like, you know, this is going to create generational poverty based on the interest rates of this loan or this situation. And I mean, we could look at some of our capitalist, you know, student loans or just interest rates on credit cards or mortgages, or, you know, there's some of that going on. Payday loans, usury. Do you work at the payday loan shop? You might want to reconsider, you know, all of this way that capitalism has influence, like how can you make the most money at whoever's expense without any concern for karma, without any concern for the harm that we cause behind sweatshops and, you know, making sure we have our iPhones made by people who aren't being treated well in China or wherever. So I think that, yes, what do we do for a living? But it's so much bigger to like, how do we relate to money, and not only earning, but also consuming? How do we spend our money? How do we relate to money? How attached are we? How much are we suffering about it? How non-attached can we be and should we be? It's said that the Buddha's first teaching, often when he came into contact with new people, was that first he would start talking about the importance of generosity, the importance of giving, sharing our resources, our time, our energy, and our finances with each other. Things like, supposedly were said, like, if you really understood the importance of your karma and your generosity and non-attachment, and that you wouldn't let a single meal go by without sharing some of it with someone that's hungry, someone in need, rather than our sort of like, do I have enough? And I need mine, and I better save my leftovers in case I get hungry at midnight. He said, you know, you would always share, always give, feed each other. But is there a such thing as so much non-attachment that you're irresponsible? Have you done that where you've given too much? You get so inspired and you're like, I gave so much. And I gave it all. And now I'm hungry. And now I can't pay my rent. And now I gave, you know, I wasn't planning. Or like I saw my father who was a very successful spiritual teacher, wrote all these wonderful books and, would do workshops, hundreds of people, very successful guy. And by the time he was in his 70s, he was completely broke. And so broke because he wasn't good with money, made some bad investments. I don't know exactly what happened because he never really told me, but he ended up so broke that they had to do fundraisers for him, like Ram Dass and all of these people had to raise money for, so that he had some money to live on for the last 10 years of his life, even though he had earning capacity in a right livelihood and was a wonderful teacher. But he said, I don't want to teach anymore and I'm broke and can you all help me out? Which I don't think is terrible. His life had been so much service and people were happy to help him, but there's something there, and maybe this is more personal to me, but hopefully relevant for all of us of, yes, non-attachment to our material things, and you don't want to be greedy and you don't want to be too worried about the future, but also responsible. And what about retirement? And what about, your 401ks and your health insurance when you're old and all of that stuff of is there a balanced relationship to money? To how we earn it, how we spend it, how we save it, how we invest it, all of that stuff. And even investing, this stuff about earning money in unwholesome ways. I don't know exactly, I'm not a stock market person, so I don't know exactly what the S&P is. Some of you do, but I know it's like a whole bunch of different stocks, right? And, most investors will be like, well, invest in the S&P. It's the safest way to, probably make 6% a year on your money or whatever. But if you really start to look at what is in those stocks that your stockbroker has invested for you through your 401k or whatever it is, how many of those businesses are engaged in what would be wrong livelihood, are engaged in killing or, kind of oppression in some way or another that you're like, I don't want to make money from sweatshops, but Apple's a great stock. I don't want to be part of, oppressing anyone anywhere. But is that really true when it comes to how you invest? And so, as a Buddhist, we have to start to look at all of this. Are we actually more interested in quick buck? Oh, it's a good investment. Or, how much investigation do we do into how we're spending our money? Where we're putting it, how we're saving it, how we're investing it. I know that there's Buddhist investors. I know on the Buddhist magazines, there was somebody for a long time, I don't know if they still are, on Tricycle in Shambhala, that was advertising ethical investing. We're Buddhists and we'll make sure that we put your money in the funds that are associated with right livelihood, because we know you care about that. And we know that the rest of the capitalist world doesn't care about that. But that part of our process of awakening is starting to become more and more awake to the importance of karma and the karma of earning and the karma of money and spending. As a mindful, this is a little bit off topic, but I just kind of talking about money. As part of your mindful investigation of your own mind, just kind of asking yourself, inquiry is such a big part of our meditation. What do I believe about money? And where did I learn that? Some spiritual, do you have any, this is all rhetorical questions, but do you have any ideas of like, as a spiritual person, that money is a little bit bad. You're not supposed to care about money. A little bit of little judgment of people who care about money. Maybe not. Maybe, maybe you don't. But looking at that, where did you get that? Even just hanging, I feel like I have a little bit of that. I put that on myself a little bit. Like, I love the Buddha so much. Like, I'm so grateful for his teachings. But also it creates a little internal dissonance of like, well, if I really was a good Buddhist, would I be like him and renounce all material and sensual experience? How much do I really love the guy if I'm over here in the householder path and he clearly was on a monastic path? And how does his celibacy and renunciation create an internal dissonance for me around my relationship to Buddhism? It does create some. And I got all these monastic teachers that are awesome, and I love the monks, and they're so kind and they're so friendly and they're so like, yeah, you can still get enlightened as a householder, you can still get totally liberated as a householder, but you have this sense that they're like, but not really. It's like, yeah, supposedly it's possible, but it's going to be way fucking harder to get really free in the midst of commerce. It's going to be way harder. One of the scriptural quotes about money that stuck with me was that one of the major benefactors, donors, one of the people that gave a lot of money to the Buddha and to his followers, to the Sangha, and not like cash, but like gave them these groves that they could live in and build them monasteries and fed them all of the time, and was just a major supporter, very wealthy businessman. And at one point, there's a dialogue between him and the Buddha, where he goes to the Buddha and he says, I'm so inspired by your teaching. I want what you have. I want to get free. I've been tremendously successful in business. I have abundance. I have, and I think, even like within a right livelihood way, I made all of this money. But I really just want to be a blessing to people. I see that you have nothing except for wisdom. You've got no material anything. You got a bowl and a robe and that's it. But you're helping so many people, and I want to help. I want to be a blessing in that way. Should I renounce my material world? Should I, is it necessary for me to let go of my business and money and in order to get free? And the Buddha says, he says, my teaching does not demand or necessitate that anybody renounce anything except for attachment. That's it. He says, if you're too attached to your if and there's a quote, who knows if it's totally accurate, that says something like, if you're clinging to it, if you're attachment, which equals suffering, if you're suffering about it, he says, then in that case, better to throw it away. Better to really, relinquish it than let it poison your heart. It's not worth suffering about. But if you can practice non-attachment, and in a responsible way, with like, yes, I've got my retirement and my ethical investments or whatever, but not in an attached way, he says, then no problem. You can, have your material things and you can get totally free as long as you're not clinging. So that's the question for each of us. How attached? How much do I cling? How much do I crave? How much do I allow money, which is a necessity on some level or another, create suffering in my heart? And when we can identify, like, oh, I do that a lot, then we can start bringing our mindfulness of the impermanent and the impersonal and it's just not worth suffering about. You can show up to work and have your money and plan your budgets and do all of that stuff and watch the craving mind say, I wish I had more, without believing it, without suffering about it, without believing that story that the mind constantly tells. And then no matter, right? And then you get more. How many times have you experienced this? I won't be happy until I get there. And then you get there and you're like, it's not, how about there? How about there? How about there? You know, like I thought if I could just make, I've watched my own life like that, feeling like when I was a kid, I can remember like if I can make $20 an hour, that's amazing. And then at some point, like, nope, I need 30, I need 50. Like, I can't live on $20 an hour. You can, maybe not in Los Angeles, but you can. Maybe I'll leave it there and open to some discussion about your relationship to money. Any questions about wise livelihood, right livelihood, avoid killing, drug dealing, exorbitant tax, exorbitant interest rates, or anything that's dishonest, any sort of treachery, dishonesty. I always wonder about like, and this is so common, like when I've traveled in Asia, where, you know, you ask somebody how much something is, where there's that bargaining culture, where it's not like this is the price. Like you ask somebody what the price is of something, and the first thing is, I'm going to lie to you. For sure, I'm going to lie to you. I'm going to lead with a lie. And if you're good at bargaining, you'll get me down. But if you're not good at bargaining, you're going to pay this price that's not actually the price. The price is flexible, which is so difficult was very difficult for me when I ran into that. It's the same thing of like here going to buy a car. They're like, well, the sticker says this is how much it costs. And you're like, but I know I can haggle a bit. I can, you know, there's a bargain here. There's a deal to be made. But people in that sales, where it's not just like a set price, are sort of in a line of work where lying is part of your job. What a drag to like be in this line of work where it's like, yeah, I'm just going to lie to you. That's part of what we do. You tell me how much? $100. How about 75? I'll take it. It was actually only $20. If you get the price on the first ask, you paid way too much. So anyways, opening it. Yeah, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been thinking like this is very much like livelihood is like very much like the spoke of the hub that's like out of balance right now for me, because I don't have a job, you know, and like a lot of my mindfulness recently has definitely been spent like planning about getting a job. You know, I've got until I think mid-May on disability, you know, and it came from the world of tech, and I kind of resonated what you said about drug dealing, which is like, I feel like a drug dealer sometimes working in tech, you know.
Got that dopamine over here.
Yeah. And so like really, you know, putting a lot of consideration to like what does right livelihood look like for me? Because on the one hand, you know, like I don't really have a lot of other marketable skills other than like working in tech, you know, like, and I certainly know that the most compassionate thing for me at this point is not to go back to being a software engineer, which is like beating my head against the wall in a lot of ways. But I guess my question or what I'm trying to get at is like, you know, what is the role of like kind of intention behind what I do choose? Because I feel like, well, if I want to keep, you know, the livelihood or like the privileges of my life that I do enjoy, like, you know, debating whether or not to like invest in an IRA that's based on cryptocurrency or gold, or like that to me is a privilege, right? But it's something that I enjoy. It's something I would like to keep in my life. I probably have to continue working in tech, because any other job, like I'm just not going to be making enough money to maintain my lifestyle. So like, you know, and like I'm also thinking like maybe it's time for me to try to branch out and do my own thing, you know, but it's probably going to be in tech again. And so like, you know, what the question is, I guess, is like, if I'm going into it with the intention of like doing well, like or doing good, like being compassionate to myself and other people, knowing full well that, especially with technology, there are often unintended consequences, right? Like, am I like setting myself up for like, you know, falling into a karmic like pit hole here, or like, you know, should I just take the easy route and like go work at Whole Foods for a while, you know, or like what, you know, is there any right answer to this at all? You know, like, I feel like what I want to be doing is not trying to make $1 million, but doing like kind of like engaged salmon, you know, like of like being mindful at every step, you know, and like trying to find some path that is meaningful, useful to me and to others, and like compassionate all around.
Yeah. I have no answers for you, but you're asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And you know, am I asking the right questions about all of this? And you're asking the right questions. And you know, there's a lot going on in the world today that we're dealing with that the Buddha didn't address directly, like technology. There wasn't any. So it wasn't addressed in traditional Buddhism. And who knows? I wonder what the Buddha would say about technology. It's, you know, it's a blessing and a curse. On one hand, we have all of the Buddha's teachings right here. You can Google the whole, you know, all of the teachings of all of the traditions, this high-powered computer. And then, you know, what's the statistic about what humans actually use the internet for? Is like 90% pornography or something. It's like, it's really disturbing. Like, you know, we have the capacity for, you know, this to be such a great tool, but how much time do we spend scrolling on social media rather than, you know, listening to Dharma talks and, you know, educational, inspirational, or, you know, there's nothing wrong with some entertainment, but how balanced do we use it, and how addicted to dopamine hits have we become because we have it right there in our grasp all the time, most of us. Kay, go ahead, jump in.
Thanks, Noah. Yeah, I mean, my question was about intention as well, right? Because I have had that conversation with my financial guy, like, what am I investing in? He's like, well, let's come in and have a discussion about it and parse through it. And I'm like, you know, then it just sounds like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 right? So, and I'm not trying to minimize the talk about, you know, because it's all very spot on, but there was that episode of The Good Place or something like that, where this character was like totally doing everything, you know, like as best as possible. But like, even as it tangentially went out, as his action went out to the other actions and the other actions, somewhere down the line, tangentially, it got all fucked up. Like it turned into evil, right? Yes. So there's a point, there's gotta be a point, right? Where if our intention is good and we're trying to maintain balance, and sure, Goldman Sachs is, you know, not great. But somehow my money's going to touch Goldman Sachs. You know, there's a part where it's out of my control and it's not intentional for me. I am trying to make, you know, keep a roof over my head. I'm trying to do all the things and, you know, have enough money so I can give to the Sangha and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And to do things that I find are generous and compassionate with my money. And if the stocks were to fail and that money I had invested went to shit, you know, hopefully I wouldn't be so attached that I would suffer terribly over it. Yeah. This is my personal individual goal, right? there are things beyond my control. And just the fact that we are human, sentient beings with good and bad and pain and suffering, nothing is ideal. Nothing in this particular world is ideal. So I don't want to suffer, is what I'm saying. I don't want to suffer over unintentional, out of my control actions.
Yeah. I mean, and I saw that episode of The Good Place too. Did other people see that? The Good Place is a sort of like, comedy, whatever, sitcom or something, but it's about the afterlife. And they figure out that nobody's going to heaven for like hundreds of years. And they're like, how can this be? Because there's all of these people that look like they're leading these really wholesome lives, but because of globalism and that like everything's just so mucked up that even the person who is sending flowers to their mom is getting negative karma for it because the flowers are GMO and like just it's not how karma works. That was a funny thing, but it's not how karma works based on our intentions. But but ignorance isn't really an excuse. We have enough awareness of what's happening globally and what's happening in the American capitalist system to do our homework and to actually sit down with the investor and say, actually, I need to know, because my intention is to, not be involved, profiting from unethical corporations. So I'm not going to buy Apple and I'm not going to buy, these good stocks because I don't want that karma. And then we have to look, or making that conscious, intentional choice to say, you know what, I'm going to take the karma because I want the money. But then being honest with ourselves about like, I am intentionally, benefiting from companies that I know are causing a ton of harm. But rather than denying it, like just tell the truth, show up and take full responsibility. Our karma is based on that intention and that honest intention. And it's possible even in this world to purify our karma.
That was not the loophole I was looking for. Just saying.
You're welcome. Tom, go ahead.
Thanks, Noah. I just kind of wanted to share, coming from both ends of the spectrum. It's ironically the 10th of this month. I went into treatment, and I was selling drugs and everything else. And here it is a year later, and, with Refuge, Recovery, and just my own practice. I mean, I've just undergone a complete transformation. I lost everything in a house fire prior to treatment. And, now I've just got a place, 2-bedroom with my 4 kids, but it's wonderful. It's like the less I have, the better. And same with money. I mean, I know I need it, but I mean, I'm back sawing lumber. Like I work with wood, which is like perfect for me. I love it. I've been doing it for a long time. And, I'm actually going back to the place I went to treatment to do be an activities director this summer. So it's really amazing to hear, just this Dharma talk and then really see both sides of the spectrum with myself personally and the experiences that have gone through to kind of get here. So it's a beautiful thing. I'm appreciative to you, and it's just good stuff. So thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Good to see you. Anybody else in the room have a question?
I've just been thinking about, because I've been thinking a lot about changing careers because I didn't really like where I was at. And I really feel like the easiest way to describe it is kind of like I just want to make as little money as possible, like is really what I feel, because I want instead of making money to buy things, I just want to be able to create the things that I need, like farming and, building your own, clothes and house and whatever.
then on the flip side of that, you know, I do have people that are dependent, but not entirely dependent. If I were to die right now, they would be fine. They got nothing else in me, they would be fine. But it doesn't feel fair to let them rely on other people and not contribute to their, you know, well-being. So it's kind of, I don't know, that's just sort of what I've been thinking a lot about.
Yeah, it's a having children or dependents puts a whole nother level of responsibility. And you know, I think it's part of my own, it's part of the karma of having kids. You made that choice to have kids or dependents or whoever, you know, where then, you know, you often don't get to do whatever you want. That's been my experience as a parent of like, oh, I'm a parent. I don't get to do whatever I want. I have to make some choices based on what's right for my kids, not necessarily what I want to do, even if it's, you know, having to work more than I'd like to work. That's all the time we have for tonight. It's almost 9 o'clock. Class is done by donation. Be super non-attached to your money. And be generous in whatever way feels good to you. And also be responsible with your money. So, you know, give what feels appropriate and is appropriate to your means. Many people like what I'm doing here enough to support the center by becoming a monthly supporter. So consider that. I mean, our overhead is just raised a bit, but our base rent is $3,500 a month. The landlord just raised the rent about another $1,000. And all of it, and you know what we're doing here is I'm trying to be as in line with old school Buddhism as possible by not charging people for classes, but by giving the teachings. And the way that it is supported is that you guys choose to give back, to support it. And it's, you know, in our society, it's really radical to actually have a place where you can go and you don't have to pay, and you're welcome whether you have money or not. And as I said, I've been doing it so far for 17 years on the west side of Los Angeles, where shit's not cheap. And it's because the community has been generous enough to help pay the rent every month. It keeps getting paid. And sometimes I'm a little nervous about it getting paid, and sometimes I have to pay it myself. There was a period there where I was, you know, supplementing. The donations weren't coming in, so I was paying it out of my own pocket, which I feel like okay with doing because I've been so well supported by the community. And but think about generosity and support of Against the Stream as part of your practice, rather than as like kind of a, I hope it doesn't feel like a burden, but part of your practice. A day-long retreat on the 16th, which is in 2 weeks. We're going to do 9 to 4 p.m. here. It's also available on Zoom. There's a registration fee for that. It's one of the ways that I bring in a little bit of money to the organization. Everyone's welcome. We're going to take the refuges and the precepts, and we're going to meditate, and we're going to do a little ceremony about, you know, compassion and equanimity and forgiveness for the ways that we fall short of living as ethically as we intend to live by the precepts. And so everybody's welcome. I encourage you to come. Sign up. If you can't afford the fee that's being asked for, the registration fee, send an email and we'll give you a scholarship. You're welcome to come whether you can afford it or not afford it. So everybody's welcome. And then the last announcement is the 3-day silent meditation retreat, May, I want to say 27th. Anyways, it's Memorial Day weekend, the last weekend in May, out in Joshua Tree. 3-day retreat. You're all invited. There is a fee for that goes to the retreat center. There's a little bit of scholarship money left, I think, a few spaces for like half price retreat. So if you'd like to come, if you can afford it, pay the full price, leave the scholarships for the people who can't afford it, which is always a dilemma, right? When you're looking at something, should I pay 600 or 300? Can I afford 600 or can I afford 300? So you have to trust yourself in that. If you can afford it, pay the full price so that somebody that can benefit from the one that can't afford it. I think that's all the announcements that I have. Thank you for your practice with me tonight, your consideration of these teachings. May any goodness that comes from our study, our conversation, our practice be gathered and shared outward in all directions. May all beings benefit from any merit we've accumulated tonight. May each one of us do what needs to be done to get as free as we can in this lifetime. And together, may we create a positive change on this planet. Next week, we will be on the sixth factor of the path, talking about effort. How much effort does it take to get free on this eightfold path? So hope to